think it's a little bit of a controversial chat today because um, maybe starting out at the beginning, we need to say we understand that there are certain circumstances where parents want to homeschool their children, but they're working full time or they have other issues that they aren't able to be directly involved with their children. And then the go-to place ends up being online schooling and that sort of thing. And you answered a question the other day, which I thought was quite cute. Maybe you want to start off with that, how you answered a mom who was saying, what is the best software for my grade 3 child, I think it was, to learn on? And you came up with a...
It was some little kid, and my answer was, Mom is the best software. Cuddle up with your kid on a couch or a comfy bed and read them stories together and learn together. And, that's the best kind of learning environment at that age when you're starting out homeschooling with little kids. And in fact, I think it's the best way to learn offline right up until at least sort of the last couple of years in high school. Our kids don't need to be online on screens. And, I think that's what we're going to talk about. Why do we say that they don't need to be online on screens to do the bulk of their schooling? And what should they be doing? And what are the benefits of doing it the way we've always done it with our own children? So maybe I'm going to let you jump in now and talk about what are some of the harmful things that happen when you put little kids in front of screens to do their schoolwork.
Yeah, so there were 3 things that come to mind. And the one was a recent sort of review. I listened to a podcast by Andrew Huberman, who is an ophthalmologist, and he was actually interviewing a senior professor of ophthalmology at Stanford University. And they were talking about the eye, just in general, eye health and that sort of thing. And one of the things that they said is that screens are one of the most detrimental things for eyes of all ages. And yet our work is there. Often our downtime and entertainment is on a screen. And he's talking specifically close distance screens, so not one TV in a room across the way. So anything under sort of 60 centimeters. And what they noticed in children's eyes when they spend time on a computer screen, particularly under the age of 16, it was, that they end up with myopia, which is short-sightedness, because the eyeball changes shape. So our eyes are meant to be a sphere, so round. But what happens is when we are consistently sitting at a screen, the eye becomes elongated. And then the point of seeing is shortened into the middle of the eye. So it's not actually hitting the retina. They call it myopia. And you're finding children needing glasses earlier and earlier and earlier. The good thing about that is that it can be reversed in young children. But the older you get, teen years, our age, it's not reversible. The eye kind of stays in that elongated position and you are then short-sighted. That was the first thing, which I thought was pretty intense, and a good warning for parents who are allowing their children to sit and do online schooling for anywhere up to 8 hours a day. And then the kids get off their school time screen and then they want to play or be on a phone or watch YouTube. So they just, had more hours on the screen. The second thing, which we learned from Brad Huddleston in his teachings on digital cocaine, was that the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your brain, which is the seat of your emotions and your responses and your emotional intelligence and that sort of thing, that is affected by the emissions from a computer and also the content that you're getting. So that means in a child who is still growing and developing and learning how to interact with the world and respond correctly to situations, you're now basically hamstringing them because you are stopping the natural development of the brain. And then the third thing is that we all think that we're superhuman, so we think that we can be busy studying or reading an article, plus having YouTube or music going. And some kids even, sneak a game in behind a screen. So their parents don't even know that they're not really focusing on schoolwork. What they're doing is they're toggling between different things depending on who is behind. And this is not something that I've made up. I mean, this is genuinely one of those concerns that I deal with when parents come and they ask for consultations. They say, how do I stop my child gaming? I say, well, are they online schooling? Yes, they are. Well, that's your first problem. You know, they're hiding it behind there and they're not doing their schoolwork. And that toggling between tasks online actually shortens attention span. So leaving those three there, I think it's good to bounce the conversation back to you, because you're going to tell us now about some of the amazing things that do happen in the brain when we read and interact and go out and do things.
Yeah. Well, firstly, especially young children, they actually need to move to learn. A lot of them can't sit still in a classroom, and now we want to make them sit for hours of a day in front of a screen, where their bodies need to be moving. They need to be developing the gross muscles, the big muscle groups, and then they also, as they start learning to write and to read and things, they starting to practice fine motor skills. And they need to do a variety of different activities in order for all that development to happen, because it's not just the physical development, it's the action that stimulates pathways in the brain that are necessary for other learning skills. It stimulates different parts of the brain, as you were saying. So there's a lot going on that we are not aware of, sort of at a surface level, when kids are moving and learning and doing things. So, and then of course, you and I always talk about reading and how sharing stories together builds a heritage in our families. We've got shared memories, we've got shared experiences. We can joke about things that we've read together, or we can talk about them. You know, they pop up in our lives in other places. You know, we read the story of the 100 Dresses and the little girl who was ignored and almost bullied, and then something happens at your child's tennis group and he feels the same, and we could relate back and say, you know, but how you respond should be like she did, or whatever. So you can use stories to approach difficult topics. And stories stimulate the right parts of the brain. It develops attention span, it develops the imagination, it builds language skills. I mean, preschoolers that are read to have over 1 million words in the vocabulary that they understand and can use, compared to kids that are not read to. And that gives them a huge academic advantage. So, and that's just preschoolers. If you keep on reading, even through the teen years, the books we read are always at a higher level of language than what most of us use in everyday life. So you're developing that database of language in a child's brain that enables them to, you know, the input develops the output.
Right.
So there's so many academic advantages. And then just the fact that you're doing things offline together means that you can see what they're doing and supervise more easily. It's much easier to be deceptive when your child's on a screen and you think they're doing what they should be, and actually they're not. So, I mean, those are just some of the benefits that I can think of off the top of my head. And I just think with all those negative factors, you know, even the online schooling, a lot of it is very expensive. So you're saving yourself money, and all it means is for 2 hours, maybe 3 hours of your day, you are with your child or supervising your child. And the rest of the day, they can be free. It's not like this kind of homeschooling is hugely time consuming. You know, once it's done, there's no homework or anything. So why not invest that 2 hours of the day with your child? It's, you know, it's such a rewarding experience. I think even working parents can do it. Even if you're working full-time, you can still spend 1.5 hours or 2 hours with your child, reading to them, checking what they've done, helping them create and do. So yeah.
No, I think just to summarize, there's 2 points that I want to draw out. And the first is that your children are not going to have fond memories of sitting in front of a computer screen. You know, but they will have fond memories of mommy being their software, of having those moments of memory making, reading, or an outing, or, you know, working through a tough issue in maths, whatever it is, you know, when it's the two of you together. So that's from the child's perspective. And from my perspective, you know, our last child finished homeschooling in 2019. And so here we are sort of 4 years later. And we can all, from my 28-year-old down to my 21-year-old, we can all still remember moments that we had homeschooling. And it might not seem like a big thing when your child is in grade 3 or 4 or 5, because you're so busy in it and you're living life with them. But all of a sudden they launch, and they're in their own worlds and their own lives. But you've got this delightful pot of memories that that you gave your all to what you were doing. And for me, that's kind of like just an add-on, when we're talking about the difference between online and offline schooling. So that I would also put out there. We don't always think the same way as when we're older and our children have left, about what we are doing right now. So yeah, well, I hope that gives mom something to think about.